Who discovered the land that has become America? What was America like before it was called America?
What was America like before it was America? Well, understanding American culture, civilization, begins with understanding that the full history of America is much like the history of Europe. The New World is very much like the Old World if you look at the long history, if you look at when it began. Well, when did what we call history, the beginning of history, when did that really begin? Way before it was recorded history. Let me tell you about that.
It all began 15 or 20,000 years ago. No, obviously it didn't all begin then, because there have been many, many eras in the development of man, and there's certainly been many, many, many eras in the glacial ages of the world. But the most recent, really significant period ended about 15,000 years ago. Glaciers covered much of North America, just as it covered much of Europe during the same period. Climate warming was not a problem. Quite the contrary. It was a good time to be a polar bear. Large glaciers. The story of America began with kilometers thick ice and snow running down into much of what is now the United States. Then it repeated. And this happened many times, again and again. Finally, after many, many cold and warm periods, our verifiable migration to the New World began. There's actually evidence that it may have come earlier, but that hasn't been substantiated yet. So we're going to go with the current theories. And basically the most popular one is that men and many animals came across that strait between Siberia and Alaska during a period when it was either iced over or it was relatively solid. The oceans have gone up, the oceans have gone down many times in the history of mankind. And during one of these periods, people started wandering out and into what became the New World. During this same period, people in this same area were expanding out into the islands, into places that became Japan and the Philippines and Australia, but that's a different story. Two key theories. The one is that possibly they walked across through Alaska. The other is that maybe mankind came by boats. They could easily have skirted the ice and come across below Alaska and entered North America that way. There's also the possibility, because we see this in really ancient times, man went out onto the oceans down in the lower Pacific and crossed a beltway of islands that ran nearly to South America. So it might not have been a great leap to move from Easter Island and across into South America. There's certainly evidence of people being in South America at pretty much the same time that people were in North America. More than people migrated during this period. Potatoes, corn, lots of good things that ultimately made their way to Europe and became part of the European economy later on. Many animals originated or spent long periods in North America that ultimately became more plentiful in other parts of the world, including the camel and the horse, and, well, the sunflower, which I believe much of my audience is very familiar with, which became, certainly for my friends in Bulgaria and Moldova, a crop, came from North America. Okay, the Western Hemisphere. During the same period that the Egyptian, the Greek, and the Roman civilizations were developing, civilizations developed independently at different places in North and South America. As you can see, we have the Aztec, and we have the Mayan, and we have the Incan, but there are also a variety of other groups that developed different levels of civilization, different types of civilization, but these three are very comparable to ancient European and Asian civilizations. The pyramids of the Mayan civilization were being built in 1500 BC and continued to be built through 1000 AD, very comparable to the Egyptian period. The Mayans developed on the Yucatan Peninsula, and they were a civilization that was not as highly centralized as some. They were more like the city-states of Greece. There was a king, there was a sky. They had their own form of communications, of symbolizing language, and they had their own mythology. Then there was the Aztecs, who came much later. We hear a lot about the Aztecs because Europeans encountered them early, and but the Aztecs developed much later in Mexico, in what is now northern Mexico, and they became a much more aggressive, much more centralized form of civilization. Much more like the Romans. They developed from a central city, and it was quite elaborate. It was quite advanced by European standards of the time. They had a few things that were a little edgy, such as a lot of human sacrifice. But you had to keep the crops growing. And well, this became a point of contention when the Europeans showed up. So all the blood and gore was not all on one side, but there was certainly plenty of fault to go around. The Incan civilization came to an end about the same period, a little bit later, due to European influence. The Incans were in existence from about 1200 to 1530. So as in terms of the more advanced civilizations of the New World, they kind of came late. They came later even than the Incans, but they were a very extensive civilization throughout Western South America. And then there's the Mississippians. And the Mississippians were going along very nicely from about 1200 AD until basically the new migration caught up to them. and their civilization also fell apart. And we'll talk about later why these civilizations fell apart. But the key thing to know is that before there was an Amerigo Vespucci, before there was an age of exploration, there were advanced civilizations by the times, according to the times, in all of the Western Hemisphere. The New World was not all that new as far as the people who lived here were concerned. There were many tribes in North America, and many of those tribes are still represented in modern America. Next time, we're going to talk about how America became America, came to be called America, how that christening was soaked in blood. It's an interesting story. See you then.